Take your can of spray adhesive and shake it vigorously. So you shake it up first before you spray it. And then you want to spray in a slow motion back and forth with a light spray. It's better to go slowly over the entire surface twice than to spray a lot at once. And if your spray is clogged and it starts throwing out very heavy blobs of glue, you want to make sure to stop and clean the nozzle. Avoid holding the can in one place so that you don't overload the glue in one spot. Once the stencil is fully sprayed, you want to pick it up and fan it back and forth. Just air out the back so that the glue sets and dries and doesn't leave any residue on the walls. And then you're going to begin to apply the paint to the stencil brush. So you're going to do this by just lightly touching the brush into the paint and pouncing a little bit so that you cover the full bottom of the brush. And then you want to offload the paint. So using a paper towel or a rag or the other side of your tray, just offload the brush so that you don't have too much paint on it. Make sure that when you're placing your stencil on the wall that it's facing front and right side up. And you can do that by, again, checking the words on the stencil. And then place the stencil starting in that least visible corner and just take the top of the stencil and place it right up to the ceiling line. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to use this canvas as my wall and position the stencil at the very top, just like it was at the top of a wall. All of our stencils are designed to repeat. So you'll see that there are registration marks on the outside part of the design. Really, you only need to stencil the inside part of the design, inside the registration marks. If you do get paint on the registration marks as you're painting, it won't really matter, but you don't need to paint them. They're there for you to be able to register the stencil as it moves north, south, east, and west. Begin to apply the paint to the stencil using a pouncing motion with the stencil brush. Don't swirl the stencil because the paint can get caught underneath the bridges and bleed. If you use a soft pouncing method and go over the stencil very evenly and maybe even 2 times, it's better to go over the stencil twice than to overload the brush and try to go on heavily all at once. Be careful not to overload your stencil brush with paint or your roller. If you do this when you apply the paint, you're going to get bleed underneath the stencil. The paint is going to run underneath, and in the end, you're going to have a lot of touch-up. And touch-up takes a lot of time and sometimes is difficult to get a beautiful, successful finish. So better to offload that paint and put it on with a little bit more care and a little less paint. So the stencil will have registration marks on the top of the stencil, on the bottom, on the right and the left. So any direction that you're moving the stencil, you will have registration marks to see where to place it. When you're moving the stencil at the beginning, you're only going to have registration marks on one side to connect it to, but you'll have the ceiling line as well to help you to line it up. Once you start making more progress on stenciling, moving across the wall and maybe down, you're going to see very quickly that you have more registration marks on other sides of the stencil to help you out.